Iran has issued a strong warning. If its oil sites are attacked, it will not hesitate to strike back at oil production facilities across the entire Middle East. And that's not all. Any attack on their nuclear facilities would be seen as a direct threat to their existence. Brace yourselves, because Iran has promised to launch between 1 and 2,000 missiles into Israel, targeting infrastructure worth over $100 billion. Just imagine, Israel could be sent back to the Stone Age. What does this explosive situation hold in store for us? Mr. Scott Ritter, I wanted to first talk to you about this discussion of an Israeli counterattack against Iran. We had Yoav Gallant, a general in the Israeli Defense Forces and the defense minister, who canceled a planned meeting in the United States. Then disagreements arose between Netanyahu and Gallant about him coming to Washington to discuss this counterattack. Gallant claims that the strike will be deadly and precise, and that the Iranians will not know what hit them. Now, Putin is also going to meet with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on October 11th, apparently to talk about bilateral relations, but also I am very sure, and I am sure you are too, that they will be talking about this. So I am curious to get your thoughts on what you think might happen here, because Iran has clearly stated that any attack would be followed by retaliation. This includes discussions about potential nuclear sites, oil sites, and any other strategic site, with the promise of equivalent retaliatory measures. So, I am curious to know what you think might happen in the coming hours and days.
Well, first of all, I think Israel is probably going to attack Iran. There was a period up until this morning, well, I guess yesterday, where I thought Netanyahu might be playing a game, putting pressure on the Biden administration to get as many concessions as possible by following up on his gamble from last July of coming to the United States, speaking to the US Congress, and wrapping himself in the American flag. The Biden administration was offering a very substantial package, basically saying that military equipment would be provided without limit, and that they would support the diplomatic effort for as long as it takes, even until hell freezes over. You'll never have to worry about anything from the United Nations, and America will seek to stifle anything that happens at the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court. You know, we got your back, just don't hit Iran. I think basically what we're saying is don't hit the critical nuclear sites or the oil sites in Iran. Somehow we keep saying it's okay to have proportional responses, because here's the problem. We don't think Iran is going to go all the way. We think that if Israel does a proportional response, somehow we can convince Iran to do a proportional response to the response and manage the ladder of escalation, because our goal as the United States, the Biden administration, is to prevent a major global crisis in the run-up to a critical national election. The Biden administration's legacy is at stake. You know, Harris is the heir apparent to the Biden presidency, and Biden wants her to win, and so they're going to do whatever it takes to avoid the kinds of crises that could derail the Harris election.
Former Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter issues a dire warning to Israel as Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant promise an imminent strike on Iran. This video breaks down the growing threat of an all-out war between Iran and Israel, with Scott Ritter offering his expertise on its consequences. One major crisis could be a global economic meltdown caused by energy insecurities due to a regional conflict threatening energy facilities in the Middle East. Iran has warned that if it suffers attacks on its oil sites, it will destroy the oil production facilities of all Middle Eastern producers. They've also stated that hitting their nuclear facilities would be an existential matter. Iran has promised to hit Israel with 1 to 2,000 missiles, targeting infrastructure worth over $100 billion. Basically, Iran is threatening to turn off the lights in Israel, deprive the country of running water, and disrupt its communications and energy production. Israel could be sent back to the Stone Age. That's what Iran is promising. Somehow Israel and the United States believe Iran is bluffing, as this represents an existential threat to Israel. Israel's existential response is the Samson option, which is nuclear. When we talk about striking nuclear facilities, it's important to note that Iran has said it will get nuclear weapons if that happens. Since May of this year, we've seen 3 major statements from top Iranian officials indicating that the current rule, which forbids the development of weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons, could be changed if Islam is threatened. As an Islamic republic, that rule would be cancelled if Israel attacks its nuclear infrastructure, which would be seen as a major threat. Public statements are key here. Statements made by government officials are usually followed by actions that give it weight. For example, a former foreign minister under Khatami, currently a member of the Expediency Discernment Council, said in May that Iran would rethink its nuclear policy and that this rule could be cancelled. More recently, a high-ranking member of the Revolutionary Guards Command claimed that Iran would build nuclear weapons if this rule was cancelled. The Iranian parliament has also called for the cancellation of the rule and has stipulated that nuclear weapons would be produced if Israel attacked us. It is important to emphasize that none of this happens without the Supreme Leader's blessing. For these officials to speak out, it means that a decision has already been made. In short, Iran has promised to hit Israel with 1,000 to 2,000 missiles and destroy over $100 billion worth of infrastructure targets, promising to turn off the lights in Israel, disrupt the water supply, and send the country back to the Stone Age. If Iran is going to produce nuclear weapons, it cannot do it in a way that requires a long lead time. It has to be able to be executed instantly, which means they have preloaded the system. This means that Iran has produced a nuclear device. Now I know there are questions. People are asking, what about that nuclear weapon test that happened in Iran? Scott Ritter doesn't believe it was a nuclear weapons test for several reasons. First, the depth of the explosion far exceeds what is usual for these underground tests, which is normally done between 600 and 800 meters, maybe up to a kilometer. This one, I believe, is at 77 kilometers, or 7.7 miles deep. This is a much more complex subject, and the logistics required to dig a cavern require precise dimensions. To carry out a test, instruments must be used on site. How can you get them down there without them being spotted? Therefore, I don't think it's possible. Then, the main issue is the diversion of enriched uranium material. Currently, Iran possesses a considerable stock of uranium hexafluoride, the raw material for centrifuges. They have a stock enriched to 60%. The IAEA recently stated that this was enough for 3 to 5 bombs, and there could even be more now as Iran continues its production. They have centrifuges specially configured to transform this 60% into 96 to 98% very quickly, modern and efficient centrifuges. Iran, which produces uranium metal, can easily convert the 60% enriched uranium into metal. They make metal plates for the Tehran research reactor. Once the uranium is converted to metal, the Iranians perform simple calculations to determine how much uranium is needed to achieve criticality. This is done according to a gun-type design. You just take a piece of uranium, remove a part to create a core, and fire it like a gun, causing fission. This was the case with the bomb, probably the little boy, dropped on Hiroshima. It was a gun-type design, reaching 15 kilotons. The Iranians could perhaps get between 20 and 25 kilotons with such a design. They can place this design on a warhead and deliver it to Israel. Currently, I think Iran has missiles capable of carrying this bomb. This device has been built. It is not sophisticated. You just need to insert the fissile material to make it a weapon. That decision has been made, they've already done it, and they are ready. Here's the news. Iran is now a nuclear power. This changes everything because if Israel uses nuclear weapons against Iranian facilities, particularly the one at Fordow, dug into the mountain, it cannot be destroyed with conventional weapons. For that, nuclear weapons will be needed. Donald Trump recently commented on the need to hit Iran's nuclear facilities. That's what needs to be done. Understand that when he says that, he's referring to his time as president when he changed America's nuclear policy and allowed the building of new weapons, specifically to destroy the underground facility at Fordow. They would have to hit Iran with a 700 or 150 kiloton weapon, which would have unimaginable consequences. The Americans are resorting to what's called a usable nuclear weapon. 2 versions were designed, including a B-61, which is a bunker buster capable of burrowing into the ground before exploding. This bomb was specifically designed to hit Iran, and Trump knows it because he incorporated it into our nuclear plan. He knows that one of the options that will be presented to the president when the time comes includes sending B-2IS, equipped with B-61 bombs, to strike Fordow. He's the one who put that in place. When he says you have to hit them with nuclear weapons, it means using a B-2 with B-61S on Fordow, probably 2 bombs to ensure redundancy. Trump is encouraging Israel to use nuclear weapons against Iran because he knows we can't destroy them without them. Israel is aware of this. Iran has declared that it has nuclear weapons. Although they don't say it explicitly, I can guarantee that they have analysts who claim that Iran has nuclear weapons and that if this policy continues, they could use them against us. Calculations indicate that 3 to 5 15 to 20 kiloton devices could destroy Israel, and Iran has proven that it can hit any part of Israel at any time. If you attack Iran, Israel will be destroyed. That's the current discussion. We are at a very serious moment in world history. Netanyahu is gambling with the lives of over 100 million people because they will be the victims. Even if Israel has 12 million inhabitants, the consequences of a nuclear conflict would affect well over 100 million people. Yet no one is talking about it. The Americans have a president who jokes about the nuclear button, a prime minister who defies the United States, while Biden has put things on the table. The U.S. ambassador to the UN said that the United States supports 2 resolutions, one for humanitarian aid, the other for a ceasefire, which the United States blocked. She said America couldn't support that, but she now has to backtrack after a call with Netanyahu. Netanyahu is desperate because he is failing in Gaza. How many times will Israel have to go in and clean up Gaza? They must now re-enter northern Gaza because Hamas is resisting, killing Israelis and firing rockets. This war has been going on for over a year, and Israel has not defeated Hamas. If Israel bombs Iran, it's the end of Israel. This would trigger an Israeli nuclear response, followed by an Iranian response. This is not the time for jokes. These are matters of survival. Just your last comment on this contrast, because we have, as you said, Joe Biden and the Biden administration who have tried in recent weeks, especially in recent days, to dialogue with the Israeli side. There is a lot of tension between Netanyahu and Biden, Gantz and Biden. And now it also seems, I don't think it's a coincidence that Vladimir Putin is taking the time to go to Turkmenistan to meet with the Iranian president on the eve of what's coming from Israel. What difference do you see here between what Russia and Vladimir Putin can say and communicate to Iran compared to how the United States has approached this? Because you called what the United States and Israel are doing stupid games because of the consequences. But now you also have Vladimir Putin stepping in and talking to the Iranian president. I'm just curious what you think might be said and how that might differ from the way the US is handling all of this with the Israeli side. Well, I think Russia and Iran are moving towards a strong strategic relationship. A key issue for Russia and Iran is Russia's long-held policies regarding the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Historically, Russia has supported sanctions against Iran because of its supposed violations of the Safeguard Agreement and so on. However, Russia did sign the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal. Trump pulled out of it, America is no longer a part of it, and Europe has not abided by it. Iran has gradually moved away from it because the deal itself allows for that. I can't remember the article, maybe 24 or 36 or something like that. If one side does not abide by the agreement, the other side can stop abiding by it until the other side comes back into compliance. It was actually something that the United States negotiated as part of snapping back sanctions. See, we put it in there because we thought Iran would be the one cheating. We were saying that if Iran cheats, then we could, snap back our sanctions. But it backfired on us because we pulled out, and Europe refuses to engage economically. And so it's Iran that's snapping back. And their snapback is basically to withdraw from the additional protocols and the provisions that had been put in place by the agreement. Russia has gradually shifted its position, as it recognizes that the United States, NATO, and the European Union have weaponized the IEA and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to stifle nations like North Korea and Iran. They saw how the United States abused the IEA in Iraq, creating in 2003 a false impression of a reborn or reactivated Iraqi nuclear program which did not exist, and holding Iraq accountable for things that were fabricated. We saw Russia basically tell the United Nations and the world that when it comes to North Korea, which has withdrawn from the NPT and has a viable nuclear weapons program, Russia will no longer hold North Korea accountable for that. The time for trying to roll back North Korea and disarm it is over. Russia accepts North Korea as a nuclear power. I think the discussion that Putin and Iran are going to have is about Iran's potential withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and how Russia, China, and the BRICS are going to handle that. What are the ramifications of it? What has to happen to trigger that? What steps does Iran have to take to avoid that? Because you have to be careful. We have a BRICS meeting coming up, which Russia has invested a lot of time and effort in, And one of the key aspects of the BRICS raison d'etre is to reject the rules-based international order and to implement a law-based international order, one that is derived from an appreciation of international law. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons is a treaty, one of the foundations of international law. So, Iran can't just flippantly withdraw from it. I think one of the discussions Russia is going to have with Iran is about managing that crisis and what can be done to avert it. Because I think the ideal for Russia would be to keep Iran in the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, but Russia understands the pressure that Iran is under, and if it becomes an existential issue like it did with North Korea, then Russia, of course, I believe, will advise Iran that if you must withdraw, here are the steps to take so that Russia can, forestall a backlash that hurts Iran, that hurts Russia, that hurts the BRICS. It also comes down to a question of timing. But the wild card here is that Iran has promised an instantaneous response if Israel attacks. Basically, they're saying that if Israel sends planes to attack Iran, by the time those planes make it back to Israel, there won't be an Israel anymore. That's how swift their response will be. So, once again, very, very dangerous times, very troubling events are unfolding. The direction Putin is going to talk about concerns the future of Iran's strategic relationship with Russia and Russia's strategic relationship with Iran. I think you're going to see that strengthen. And also, I think you're going to see Russia once again back Iran on this nuclear issue, but it has to be done properly. It can't be a knee-jerk reaction. That's not how the Russians operate. The Russians do everything deliberately, and there has to be a legality attached to everything. So, I think Russia will work with Iran on how Iran can best withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and declare its new status as a nuclear power.